this video session, we will be taking up a very interesting topic which is a part of couple and family counseling. In couple counseling, the things that you need to know before we cover the techniques are: what is couple counseling, which includes its meaning and the historical background. Also, how is it different from marriage counseling? And what are the goals of couple counseling? And the various therapeutic approaches to couple counseling. The knowledge of these is required to be better able to understand the techniques of couple counseling. Now, coming to the main topic, that is the techniques in couple counseling. In couple counseling, there are many techniques which are derived from the various theoretical approaches like the psychodynamic approach, the emotion-focused therapy, the systemic approach, Gottman therapy, etc. Each approach has developed its set of techniques based on their theoretical assumptions. There are also certain general techniques which are commonly followed in all kinds of therapies. In this session, we will be covering 5 main techniques of couple counseling: communication training, problem solving, behavior exchange, conflict de-escalation, and externalization. Let's understand the first one, which is the communication training. Now, in communication training, here what happens? The couple is taught to improve their expressive and receptive communication skills to help them communicate more directly and clearly to each other about their feelings, about their plans, their thoughts, and their perceptions. The couple is also trained in developing reflective listening, active listening skills, giving and receiving feedback, and disclosure skills. Listening skill is an important part here. It seems simple, but not really so. Couples learn specific guidelines to help them effectively perform each of these skills. For example, when individuals are trained in the disclosure skill, they are instructed to use more of I statements than you statements and be more specific than generalized. For example, someone might say, "You don't cooperate with me. It's so frustrating." Instead, it would be better if they put it up like this: "I feel frustrated when you don't help me in getting the children ready for school." So, the couples are guided to state their views in a clear, specific, and subjective manner, as opposed to being objective and generalized. Take another example. Instead of saying, "The house is so disorganized," the individual is encouraged to say, "I feel the house is disorganized," which shows that individual's perception. This is an individual perception and not an objective reality. The couples are also taught to broaden their statements, to be fact-based, specific, and include their feelings to avoid overgeneralizations. Like, for the same example we are saying, "For the last few days, when I come home from work, I find toys and paper scattered all around the drawing room and the kitchen to be messy. I think the house is disorganized and I feel upset about it." The persons can also conclude with a positive feeling or expectation, like, "I'm sure you also like to keep the house clean." So, this is in brief about the communication training which I have covered here. The other technique in the couple counseling is behavioral exchange. It's a very simple technique and it can be easily applied in day-to-day life. where the couples are asked to do something which makes the other partner happy. It is like doing or expressing, small acts of love, respect, or care that are pleasing to the other person. They do not necessarily have to be really big or out of the way. They are simple activities which anyone can do in the day-to-day life. For example, making tea in the morning, giving sweet surprises, cooking what the other partner likes, whatever you think will make the other person happy. The technique is designed to increase the number of positive interactions between the couple. These small acts can make a significant difference in one's bonding and can improve the relationship. So this is about the behavioral exchange. The other technique is problem solving, which consists of two phases: problem definition and problem solution. Now we know that we are always surrounded by problems in our life, isn't it? But the main cause of discord between couples can be that one person might see something as a problem, but the other person might not find it problematic. And this can cause differences between the couple. So, the first step is about identifying the problems. Now, when the couple come to therapy, they have a history of expressing anger, hurt, complaints while talking about their problem. This happens many a time. So the problem identification begins by expressing appreciation, understanding, and positive regard for each other. It is like laying a foundation of positive interactions for improved collaboration during the therapy. The partners are encouraged to recognize specific circumstances, behaviors that surround the problem and express their feeling about the problem. After clearly defining the problem, the therapy moves to the next step of the problem solution, which involves brainstorming about all probable solutions to the problem at hand. Each option is reviewed thereafter, and options that seems impossible, impractical, silly, they are discarded. For options which are chosen, couples also anticipate the obstacle that might interfere with the implementation, and plans are made for dealing with those obstacles. Thereby, the therapy helps them to learn to arrive at mutually satisfying solutions. In addition to these, each of the partners is also trained to understand their own role in the particular problem, to avoid blaming, which comes very naturally to each of us, and to engage in problem solving. So that is how it happens. There is no exact examples I can give here because it is a process which takes time. Another method in couple counseling here is the conflict de-escalation. This is one of the techniques. The reason of origin of this kind of technique is when the couple come to therapy, many a times there are many differences among them, and there is a lot of negativity and hostility between them, which is clearly felt by the therapist. So it is very difficult for the therapist to carry on the communication. And that is why in the initial phases, conflict de-escalation is important. The objective here is to reduce the hostility and tension and the conflict which is there, so that the therapy can take place in a successful manner. It includes 3 stages. The first is negative cycle de-escalation. Second is restructuring of negative interactions. And third is integration and consolidation, which are important and time-consuming steps. So, couples are learning to identify what are the negative interaction patterns which happens between them. In any relationship, over a period of time, we unknowingly might develop a pattern or a habit of negative communication. Take an example. Negative interaction may involve a dominating or controlling behavior by one partner and a differential or submissive behavior by the other. Partners can function in this type of cycles for years without there being any overt conflict, until one day when the partner in the submissive position shows resistance and stand up against the unequal dynamics in the relationship. Now this creates great anxiety in the dominant partner and differences among the couple. Rather than acknowledging that he or she was wrong in the first place, the dominant partner might view it as a threat to his or her status and might use more coercive strategies. The task of the therapist here is to help couples identify and break the cycle of negative interactions by making them learn how to express their underlying emotions properly. Couples are coached to express acceptance for each other's emotions and be compassionate towards each other. The last technique in couple counseling is the externalizing technique. Here, what is happening is the therapist is helping the couple in perceiving the problematic behavior which they are experiencing as external and modifiable and not something stable or permanent aspect of their being. So many a times, one or both the partners might feel that the cause of the problem lies within them, that this is related to me as a person. Now, it is very difficult to change the person or the personality, but it is comparatively easier to change a problematic behavior. So, the therapists tell them to understand that the problem is something which is external, which is modifiable, and they can bring change if they want. It is easier to modify behavior or action tendencies than to change the core personality trait. I hope you understand this. That's the basic assumption of externalization. So that not everything is internalized and perceived impermeable. So this is all about the techniques in couple counseling. Let us move to the next topic of this session, which is the techniques in family counseling. So for this, you need to understand the difference between couple counseling and family counseling. On a very general basis, I can say that a family is composed of more than two partners. There can be children, there can be extended family members involved. So family counseling is different in that respect. Naturally, when the composition in it has changed, the techniques also get slightly modified to cater to the demands of the new situation. Before we move to the techniques in family counseling, I think you need to have an idea about certain topics like meaning of family counseling, the goals of family counseling, and the theoretical approaches to family counseling. Now here, I will be covering a number of techniques like hypothesizing, reframing, tracking, family sculpting, family choreography, genograms and timelines, and unbalancing. So let's begin with the first one, that is the hypothesizing. Now if you have done any kind of research, you would know there is a hypothesis. It's a set of assumptions from which we begin our research. Similarly, in this technique, which is derived from the Milan theory of family therapy, there is a construction of systematic assumptions that give a direction to the therapeutic interview. It helps to make sense of the problem in the relational context. Whenever a client or a family comes to a therapist the therapist gains a certain amount of information from the family and frames some kind of assumptions about the relationships in his mind, that this seems to be the cause of this, this is happening, this might be the reason for it. So this is the starting point of the therapy. But these assumptions are not permanent. They may get modified in the light of new information which keep coming. So when a hypothesis gets supported by the incoming information and gets confirmed again and again, then only a therapist can go on to suggesting solution or a right solution for the problem. Take an example. There is a lady who gets separated from her husband. She is 35 years old and has a daughter who is 13 years old. Now the mother and the daughter have come to the therapist for the difficult behavior the daughter is showing. So daughter is an identified patient here. She is rebellious, she is rude, she is also showing occasional delinquent behavior. Now based on the primary information got from the mother, therapist hypothesizes that this behavior of daughter is reflecting that she is missing her father and she is wanting to get him back in the family. However, these assumptions are not supported by the daughter when the therapist talked to her. Then during the course of therapy, therapist realizes that the mother is in relationship with another man. Now the therapist might reject the earlier hypothesis and frames a new one now, that maybe the mother's affinity with other man or her new relationship is what the girl is resisting. And then further into therapy, after talking to the daughter, it gets clear that yes, the girl's behavior is an expression of this resistance. So the hypothesis gets accepted, and now the therapist would further work to understand the issues and give suggestions accordingly. So this is a process of hypothesizing and how it takes place. As a therapist, one cannot proceed without hypothesizing. However, at the same time, we need to cross-check, keep evaluating the hypothesis to know that the therapy is going in the right direction. Now, the other technique which we are covering is reframing. Reframing is a technique which involves giving an alternative and a positive explanation by the therapist to the client's perception of any action, event or occurrence. In a way, therapist is providing another reasoning, another way of looking at that problem. So take an example, there is a girl named Ananya who comes to the therapist and says that my mother is constantly calling me on phone when I go out of the house. And I don't know why she's so distrusting, why she can't trust me. So the therapist might say that if you look from another angle, Ananya, it might be a kind of genuine concern or love towards you. Isn't it nice about your mother to be concerned and caring for you? So this is giving another perspective. Maybe the girl has not thought in that direction. In reframing, the therapist is not pushing or forcing his or her perspective. It's a suggestion or redirecting the perspective of the client. It is giving new meanings to the client's viewpoint. Another technique which we will cover is tracking. Tracking, as the word suggests, is a technique that is used to gain a deeper understanding of the interaction patterns among family members in the context of a problem. It is derived from the structural family therapy. It does not focus on why of a problematic behavior. Instead, how it happened, under what circumstances it happened, who were the participants involved, what were their actions before, during or after the event occurred. Take an example. There is a problem which has occurred and the family is discussing the problem with the therapist. Instead of probing that why the problem happened, the therapist focus on the problem structure in detail. What is the context of the problem? Who are the people who are involved? How did it actually happen? Who said what? So here, how of a problem is more important than why. Because the assumption in this is that the structure of the family is one of the major cause of the differences among the members. So during the therapy, the therapist not only inquire about the events at home or in the specific context, but also complements his or her understanding with observations during the therapy, like who is interrupting during the therapy, who is supporting the other family members, who is agreeing or disagreeing, who is dominating, who is speaking the most or the leads, etc., etc. This helps a therapist to assess the family dynamics and plan the therapy accordingly. Now, the other technique is the family sculpting. Family sculpting is a technique developed by Cantor and Dan. We know a sculpture, you have heard the word, is a piece of art which a person makes through various materials. Similarly, this technique involves creating a family sculpture in a number of ways. It can be done through stones, it can be done through physical arrangement or positioning of family members, or role playing also. In this, the therapist asks any person to become a sculptor who will make a sculpture of the family. That person is asked to place the people of the family in particular positions which the sculpt feel best reflects the person. So suppose the sculpt feel his father to be dominating and egoistic person. So he might place his father in a standing position with his chin up and ask him to raise his eyebrows. So that is, the sculpture he is making of the father. Suppose the father and mother are not in talking terms. So the mother is placed at a distance from the father with their backs facing each other. So all the family members, including the sculpt himself or herself, is asked to take a position or play a role with emotional expressions to indicate the dynamics within the family. Now this can be a non-verbal activity, or the sculpt can give particular dialogues to each of the family members. Suppose the father is perceived to be criticizing in nature by the person who is acting as a sculpt. So he can give a dialogue to his father, "You never do things well." Similarly, the mother might be always obeying the father. So she might be given the dialogue, "Okay, I will do so." So this is a way of depicting the family. It may or may not involve psychodrama. The other technique which we are covering is the family choreography. The word is very familiar. This is also very similar. This technique is similar to the family sculpture technique, but it goes one step ahead. It not only depicts the present relationships between the family members, but how they ought to be according to the sculpt. It's a visual display of how the person wishes the family to be. That is the ideal or the improved version of this family. So if you want your father to be humble, you just put the chin down and ask him to have a smiling facial expression. Similarly, if you want your mother to be slightly more assertive, you can ask her to make a particular emotional expression or dialogues to depict the same. So that is about that. The other technique is the genogram and the timeline. The genogram is a graphical picture of the family history. It shows the family's basic structure and demographics. It is a symbolic way to represent the information about the family. It helps the therapist to pursue the therapy in an effective manner. It's like a family tree, which we know, which we also draw, where we put senior most family members like grandparents and great grandparents on the top, and their daughters, then son and daughter, sons, they're like the parents, and then the children and their siblings below. So that's how it is shown. It indicates the various interlinkages which are there, and also gives an idea to the therapist which area he or she would like to dwell more into. Related to the genogram is the timeline. Timeline is a visual display of the important events which are happening in a family and the spacing between the events. So when the last festival was celebrated together, the dates, if there is a specific death in the family, then when did that happen? So these are important days. So these are important events. There are other specific events like divorce, when that happened, which year, what time. The timings are very important for therapy process, as they might be also the reasons for many of the problems in the person's life. So this was about genogram and the timeline. And the last technique which we are covering here is the technique of unbalancing. It is derived from the structural family therapy. So you should know what there are three processes, there are three stages in the structural family counseling, which you also cover in the theoretical approaches. Joining the family system, wherein the therapist establish a connection with the family members by changing his or her own behavior, that closely matches with the family. And the second stage is the conceptualizing or diagnosis, where there is analyzing the processes that cause the problematic behavior that the therapist is doing, and the restructuring the family system, where the therapist is encouraging the family members to make changes in the ways they respond to each other. Now, unbalancing is a part of the last stage, which is a restructuring family system. Here, the therapist briefly joins or supports one subgroup or individual in order to use his or her authority to change those relationships or the rigid structure in the families. Unbalancing is a way to change, to alter the present hierarchical relationships in the family, okay, which might be dysfunctional, and allow the members to try out new roles that they believe that they were not attainable. The goal here is to transform an ineffective structure to healthy family functioning. So let's summarize. We have covered some of the major techniques in couple counseling and family counseling in this session. There are 5 in the couple counseling, and I think 7 to 8 in the family counseling, which we have covered in this session. I hope you have understood and enjoyed this lecture and have gained a better understanding of the techniques of couple and family counseling. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.